Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Black Heart signing, Black in, shining again, asking you to hit that share button because the message is more important than the messenger. This message is about, well, you can see the title, The Effects of Niglam, the symptoms of Niglam, the infection of Niglam. We traded in Islam for Niglam on multiple occasions. The first thing we did was we made the mistake of thinking that if it wasn't for Elijah Muhammad, that African Americans would not know about Islam. I beg to differ, and here's why. First off, Elijah Muhammad did not necessarily make Malcolm. He gave Malcolm a platform to do his own work. Malcolm was a reformist that was charismatic, and he was educated. He was self-taught. He was autodidactic. This man was highly intelligent. Malcolm grew the NOI. He didn't found the NOI. He didn't start the NOI. He grew the NOI because that's what he knew. The NOI started off a few hundred members. It became something like 25,000, I think, or 250,000, one of those numbers under Malcolm. He was going and starting more NOI temples than anybody else had been able to do because he could draw crowds and he can bring them in. That's what happened. But see, let's take a look at Malcolm's leanings. See, Malcolm went to some of these Back to Africa meetings with his father, who was a Garveyite preacher. Well, who influenced Garvey? Muhammad Duse Ali, a Muslim black man from Sudan and Egypt. He was an Egyptian Sudanese, mostly Sudanese, Muslim, anti-colonialist. He also had worked in Nigeria and in London, and he actually got somewhat fed up with Marcus Garvey taking his anti-colonial and imperial philosophy, but then leaving aside the Islam. Why? Because he understood that his religion, Islam, was already a force against oppression. This was a necessity. So, if Malcolm had had time to read and study about Garvey, he would have learned that Garvey was already influenced by a Muslim. Muhammad Duse Ali also worked with some Muslim organizations in the United States. Worked with them. I don't know if he founded any, but he worked with them. Elijah Poole was born in Sandersville, Georgia, or he was at least raised there. Sandersville is not a coastal city in Georgia, but it is close to the coastline. And the coast of Georgia, as you know, has the colleague tribe to the Creoles. They are the Gullah and the Geechee. They kept a lot of Africanisms. They meant to do it, and they're more aware of their connections to Africa now than they were previously. Now, we Creoles don't know the Gullah Geechee personally because we don't live in the same areas. We're not from the same parts of the United States, but I know they exist, and my hat goes off to them. Now, the Gullah and the Geechee are comprised of both Christians and Muslims. They've always been comprised of both Christians and Muslims. That means there were Muslims among them when Elijah Muhammad was born. He knew some of those Muslim families growing up. Later on, he took a repackaged Islam and tried to sell it to black folk, and they really weren't buying that in any large numbers until Malcolm came along. There you go. We do not owe this debt of gratitude to Elijah Muhammad. We owe the debt of gratitude to Muhammad Duse Ali, to other Muslims, to Dawood Faisal, or maybe his name was Faisal Dawood. I forgot exactly the order of his name, but he was a central figure in the Sunni Muslim community up in Cleveland before Elijah Muhammad. So this fake Islam, or this false Islam that the NOI is preaching, it's not Islam. And we don't owe them a debt of gratitude, and we never did. Before them, there was the Moorish Science Temple. We don't owe them a debt of gratitude either. Why is that? Because there was actually Islam among African Americans before that point. The majority of us were Christians. I'm not saying that we weren't. But what I'm saying is that there was Islam among African Americans without these pseudo-Islamic groups. And later on, another offshoot came about from the NOI, and that's the Five Percenters. And that's why some of you call yourselves so-and-so the God. Now, I don't say this out of hatred. I'm just telling you politely, we ain't God. God don't need no doctor's appointment. God don't come out of no wombs. So unless you're changing the definition of the word God, you ain't no God. I ain't no God. But we keep on acting like we owe a debt of gratitude, and I believe that's why these things were started, to be honest with you. I'm convinced now that they were probably started because J. Edgar Hoover even said, I think in the 40s, he said that his major fear for African Americans was not, his major fear for the United States, was not a foreign power. It was that the African American would learn about Islam. He said that that was his major fear for the U.S. He didn't fear any foreign power. So what happens? Pseudo-Islam. The NOI. Moorish Science Temple may have been around before him, but the NOI. What else? Five Percenters. Talking about some Allah means arm, leg, arm, head. Why would the head be last anyway? Are you kidding me? Calling each other God. And then Father Allah to them was a man named Clarence 13X who wound up dying from bullets. Oh, so people just gonna shoot God like that? And what is the reason for that? Well, obviously, what is the one thing that has not necessarily been associated with African Americans, or Africans for that matter? Islam as it was revealed. And I can tell you, just because some tragic desert mulattoes don't understand the value of blackness does not mean that their religion it doesn't mean that they got this from God, or that there's some sort of divine sanction for it. They're just brainwashed. That's what that is. But let's get back to this today. African Americans have been duped into passing up Islam for Niglam and Prislam. And one of the major mechanisms of this has been the focus on recruiting exclusively from ghettos and prisons and jails. Now, this was not always the case, but in the beginning, it was exclusively prisons and ghettos and jails and nowhere else. In the beginning. By the time I came up, the NOI would recruit on college campuses as well. Not heavily, but they would do it. Why? My question is, why not start from the very beginning? Why not start at the middle? Why not start with actually the skilled labor class, and then those in prisons and jails and ghettos that were convinced, and those in suburbs that were convinced, but focused mostly on the skilled labor? Why not do that? That would have made too much sense. And the effects of starting only in prisons and ghettos and jail can still be felt today, because many people who are Sunni came through the NOI. Those many elders who are Sunni came through the NOI. Not so much the young folk, but many started off NOI. Later on became Sunni. But what happened? They took that niggerdom with them. Porch monkeyism. Spear chuckerism. Tarzan movie monkey crap into Islam with them. We don't snitch. Well, that's good when you're dealing with the white man. But what about when somebody actually commits a murder of someone that the black community nationwide and even worldwide needs at a time that He is needed. Would you just gonna let his killer walk around? That's exactly what happened. We let the ones who didn't kill him stay in prison and lose their families, and we let the one who killed him, the one that we knew about when he was still alive, just walk around and just keep on living. That man, look, if you weren't going to turn him into the white man to be dealt with, and they weren't going to do nothing anyway, he should have been homeless. Or he should have had to live among white folk. That's what should have happened. He should have been a persona non grata amongst us. Okay, so he became Sunni, a real Muslim, and he made his Hajj. Okay, then, now when is he going to go and step up and say, you know what, Sister Betty, let me look after you, let me take care of you, let me take care of them babies too? That never happened. He never so much as said 2 words to Betty. Now, if he had said 2 words to her and he had confessed, then he probably would not have been protected anymore, but you get the idea. He had it too easy after what he did. And I'm sorry, but Malcolm's life was worth more than his. That's just the truth of the matter. And for the others in Newark to defend him the way that they did was atrocious. Shadid Muhammad was right. You niggas are not for who Malcolm fought. And if you are not for whom Malcolm fought, then I will not fight for you. Now, I'm inspired to do such, but I'm sorry, the black community is going to have to stop being a nigger community, and this goes especially for the Muslims. I don't mind defending you where your rights are trampled upon and where you were considered inferior by other people just because you're black. I'll stand up for you, stick up for you. I've done it in my personal life, and I'll do it again, Lord willing. But what I will not do, niggers, is defend your right to still be niggers, especially after you've taken your shahada and accepted Islam. Islam is not the re-niggerization of the nigger. It is the de-niggerization of the African. End of story. You look at the spread of Islam throughout Africa. You can check with Rudolph Bilal Ware to find out more about that. Imam Naim Abdullah. I think he's out of Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. You can check with them to find out more about it. But what I can tell you basically is that it didn't spread through conquest. As a matter of fact, the political boundaries spread in North Africa through conquest, but the Berbers accepted it without conquest later on, after the conquest. But when it came to what we now call Black Africa, oh no, they weren't doing that, Jack. They couldn't, and they didn't think they could. They didn't try it. They didn't imagine they could, and they didn't. It got into tropical Africa by way of Abyssinia. First, the king accepted it. The historical accounts don't show such because he had to keep it a secret, but he accepted it. And that's not all. It was accepted from the top down and the bottom up in Africa, and that makes it unique, along with one other part of the world that did not have to be physically conquered in order for the people to accept it. Ironically, you know what that part is? Tropical Southeast Asia, southern Thailand, the southern Philippines, actually most of the Philippines, the archipelago, which means Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei. These areas have not required conquest by Arabs for them to accept Islam. Their people accepted it in the markets, and their kings accepted it on the thrones, and it went to the middle from there. These areas are unique in that regard. And ironically, these are the groups of people that don't go around picking fights with everybody else, and they really get along with each other sometimes better than they get along with their own. Oh, that's real. Yeah, that's the proof of the matter. But we black folks have let people lead us too easily from Islam into Niglam and Prislam and Fakelam. And we paid the price for it. And I think that the first thing we need to do, those of us that are Sunni, is stop continuing the legacy of the NOI, focusing on ghettos and jails and prisons to recruit. I'm not saying exclude them. I'm saying we need to stop focusing on them. I've seen dawah groups. When I was in Atlanta, I saw the ones who followed W.D. Muhammad. And what did they? They only went into low income areas. They would not go into Cascade, a black high income area. Would not do it. Wouldn't even go and just put a pamphlet in anybody's mailbox. They simply would not. And they wouldn't even go into the middle class black areas. No. It had to be the ghetto. It had to be the hood where you could get shot if you weren't from there. I definitely would have been with my phenotype in some of those areas. Definitely. Or only the jails and only the prisons and nowhere else. And we're paying for it. Because there are things that we do need to learn. Shadeed Muhammad could teach us, but you know what? We ain't ready to learn it. And consequently, you become incorrigible, and then you cannot deniggerize after you've taken your shahada. So that means there's something missing in your faith. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I came from an educated background. I didn't come from a suburb. I didn't come from a wealthy neighborhood. I came from a nice neighborhood with a few wealthy people in it. And I accepted Islam. You know what I can tell you? I don't know of any other Muslim in my neighborhood from which I grew up. None. Now, there's one guy who says that he's Muslim, but he actually walks around talking about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad all the time. He was asking me, how do I get to Mecca, Black? How do you get to Mecca? You can't go to Mecca. And you don't want to get caught there either. They'll throw you into prison for a little while. But why, Black? Yeah, well, you got to be Muslim to go. Okay, I'm Muslim. Who do you follow, bro? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's another religion. And you don't want them to catch you like that there. Even if they let Farrakhan go, you don't want them to catch you like that there because you ain't Farrakhan. You ain't no celebrity. You're a regular Negro from the same neighborhood as me who takes medicine to stabilize his moods. You're not going to get away with that stuff. I'm sorry, man, but actually, I'm not sorry to say this. Shadeed Muhammad has had to get on the community, and he's right. And frankly, look, I'm going to tell people that this is the right religion. I'm going to do that. But if you are not going to act like it, I'm going to start telling them you ain't Muslim. Because I'm sick and tired of people not being able to see what the solution is because your ignorant nigger behind keeps on with the symptoms of the affliction even after you got the cure in your hand. I mean, it's like you just keep on blowing your nose and sneezing and coughing, but you got the cure for the cold right there. Blowing your nose with your left hand, but you won't take the cure with your right hand. It's like you keep passing out, falling over and hitting your head, but all you'll eat is candy. You keep losing teeth, but all you'll eat is candy. And people can see you. And even though they don't have the dietary rules you have, they still eat better than you. And I'm sitting up saying these dietary rules are actually the way to go. And they're looking at you and saying, well, he subscribes to the same dietary rules, but he's always passing out. Yeah, but that doesn't mean the diet's the problem. He's not eating that diet. Well, I can't tell the difference. I'm tired of having to get into this with people, man. Because you want to stay a nigga. I don't snitch. What about when somebody wrong? You don't snitch. But then when somebody does something right, but it's not convenient to you, you want to shame them in front of everybody. Man, that nigga reading too much, man. Oh, so you want to shame him in front of everybody talking about he read too much. But Mustafa Shabazz shot and killed Malcolm, and people knew this even before Talmadge Hare put it in the affidavit, but ain't nobody won't snitch. You niggas. Jungle bunny, tree swinging, Tarzan chasing, porch monkey, coconut cracking, pork chop eating ass niggas. Your shahada means nothing to me. until you change who the hell you are. I said it to the Bedouins, and now I gotta say it to my own kind. Change who you are, nigga, or I'm not gonna fight for you. And I'm gonna tell people you ain't Muslim, because I won't have a choice in order to save them from themselves when they're looking for salvation. Done. Thanks for listening. Sorry it took me 20 minutes and longer. I hope that, though, believe me, if I ever meant this about anything I recorded, I definitely mean it about this one. I sincerely hope that what I have said right now is not true one day in the future. In the meantime, I hope it helps you to make it not true. And if you're willing to fix yourself and get rid of who the F you were before that made you a nigga, I'm on your side. And I mean that from the bottom of my black heart. Signing Blackout. Assalamu alaikum.